What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another edition of the 415ers podcast. As always, on the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network with 95.7 The Game. We're going to get into some draft day hot takes today, what the 49ers could and might not be doing in the upcoming NFL draft. As we're recording this on Wednesday, it will drop on Thursday, day of the NFL draft. Going to talk about some quarterback rumors that once were and now are not, as well as maybe something else that the 49ers hinted at this week. But before we do so, that's Marc Grandi. I'm Evan Giddings. Marc, my man, how are you?
I'm doing well, Evan. Recording this Wednesday evening, as you mentioned. Those of you watching along on YouTube, on 95.7 The Game's YouTube, you can see I'm wearing my proud Arsenal jersey. Of course, for those of you that are soccer fans, football fans, not a very good day for the
European
Gunners.
football fans.
Yeah, European football fans. Not a very good day for the Gunners of Arsenal losing in a title chase. So despite that, I'm doing all right. Warriors playoffs, NFL draft is around the corner. I have other things to occupy my mind, so I don't have to dwell on a bad loss for my favorite soccer team. But other than that, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Look, obviously my day is going a little bit better than yours. A 3-1 L to the top team in the Prem.
4-1.
4-1. Oh,
yeah.
They got one more.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that.
Erling Haaland, the legend, the young goat, got one very late. So
the legend continues to grow for Erling Haaland. And apparently the legend, at least in San Francisco, is growing a little bit for one Sam Darnold, because look, we talked about John Lynch's comments prior to the NFL draft, discussed some things about Trey Lance, shut some things down about Nick Bosa as well as Brandon Ayuk, but Christian McCaffrey was publicly available for comments, I believe, on Tuesday, Marc, and he was, of course, asked about his former teammate, Sam Darnold, formerly of Carolina, now with San Francisco, potential QB in the mix for the 49ers. And his quote about Darnold was, quote, he can make any throw. He's a smart quarterback, does not play beyond anything, and does exactly what he's told all the time and adds some flair. So before we dig into those comments, I'll offer you the first serve, Marc. What did you make of Christian McCaffrey sticking up for his dude?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Sticking up for a guy that he was teammates with last year. They both went to school out in the West Coast. I'm sure they knew each other from before they were in the National Football League. It's important to note, or at least to just say, Christian McCaffrey is not going to disparage any person on the roster. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be someone he's just met the day before. He's only going to say good things about that person. He's never going to trash anyone that's on his roster. It's just simply not going to happen. So I think take all of these comments with a grain of salt. But when you look at the large, scheme of things and the bigger picture, this is just kind of another notch in the Sam Darnold column. And that column recently, Evan, is getting pretty, filled up. And there aren't very many notches on the Trey Lance column. So maybe by itself, doesn't mean all that much. He's his former teammate, current teammate as well. A guy he's known longer than most guys, at least personal relationship than most guys that are on the 49ers roster currently. And it's a teammate. But when you take into account the larger picture, maybe it's a sign of something that could be coming this offseason for the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that Christian McCaffrey, number one, consummate pro, obviously has some familiarity with Darnold, even going back to college, of course, USC, Stanford, and then in Carolina. But I do think this is a little more about Christian McCaffrey. And that's honestly a player, Marc, we have not discussed a whole lot this offseason, and was the primary reason, in my opinion, behind the 49ers run. Even maybe you can make an argument more so than Brock Purdy towards the tail end of the season. Once he got there, they were a completely different team. And I think Christian McCaffrey maybe isn't the sole reason. We've mentioned Steve Wilks moving from Carolina now to the defensive coordinator position in San Francisco as a connection between Darnold and the 49ers. But if I'm Sam Darnold, I saw what Christian McCaffrey did in 2017. I've seen what he's done when he's not injured. And I want to play with Christian McCaffrey. Everyone in the NFL should want to play with Christian McCaffrey if you want your life to be easier. Combine that with the amount of weapons and the amount of playmakers surrounding CMC. I want to be with them. And now it's just really about Sam Darnold having a chance to get on the field, which apparently, according to Kyle Shanahan, he's going to have a chance to do, getting QB1 reps alongside Trey Lance until Brock Purdy is healthy enough to give it a go. So when I hear Christian McCaffrey kind of sticking up for his guy, number one, I hear everything that he's talking about. Him saying, quote, does exactly what he's told to do. That's a 49ers cornerback. Check. Quarterback. And the flair part isn't to me so much as something that fits the San Francisco offense as it is trying to, just kind of sprinkle a little extra pepper on top of the Darnold train. And I understand why CMC is doing it. And I think that the main reason why Sam Darnold is in San Francisco is because of number 23.
So I have a question for you, because something that I've been wrestling with over the last, month and a half since Sam Darnold was signed here. Maybe it's been a little longer than that, almost 2 months. You and I had this conversation a lot leading up to the signing, and even after the signing. There's a line at which, a quarterback better than that line, higher than that line, tells you what the Niners think about Trey Lance. And, if the Niners bring that quarterback in, maybe it means they don't believe in Trey Lance. I think you and I both agreed that Sam Darnold was above that line, maybe slightly, but probably above that line. But you and I then are trying to figure out, okay, well, was Sam Darnold promised something ahead of time? Did the Niners tell him something about Trey Lance? Was he just going in, and is he content being a third string guy potentially? Is he just trying to rehab his career with a year of not playing, learning a great offensive system, a la Mitch Trubisky, who did that with Buffalo and then got another chance at a starting job, although it did not go well? What is the motivation for Sam Darnold to be here? I think my line of thinking is he was probably told something about Trey Lance and the Niners' belief in Trey Lance, or lack thereof. But you say something interesting. Maybe he just loves Christian McCaffrey so much. Do you think his desire to play with Christian McCaffrey is enough to sway him to potentially go to a place where he might only be a third string quarterback instead of somewhere else where he has a legitimate chance to actually play some snaps?
Well, and I don't mean to parse your question, but I do think that the last two things you mentioned are completely connected. Yes, he has the chance to probably be, and I think, quarterback 3, but he also has a chance to play. Like, when you're in San Francisco and you're a quarterback, your number might just be called at a moment's notice. So I do think that there is some thinking from Sam Darnold of, all right, where am I looking at that's going to be great? Not only to, like, all the factors you mentioned, I think play into this. If you're looking for one that's the biggest, I think that if Sam Darnold can get on the field, number 23 is the biggest reason why he wants to be in San Francisco. I don't think necessarily Sam Darnold was promised anything, but I think he's smart enough to read the room and say, okay, well, you drafted this guy. You kind of didn't want to play him his first year. You started him his second year, but then he got hurt. And then you went down to your third string guy and he stepped up, and now he's vaulted himself into the forefront, but he's also injured. Where is there the best situation for me as a backup quarterback to potentially start with the best possible roster? And if you're looking around the NFL, it's clearly San Francisco. Harold is looking at things the for me to succeed. And if I don't play, where can I rehabilitate my image? All three of those factors align with the 49ers.
Maybe, and I think me using the phrase, what did the Niners promise him, is probably a little too strong. I just think that there's a big part of me that believes when the Niners approach Sam Darnold, one, maybe Sam Darnold's a little bit surprised, saying, hey, you've got 2 quarterbacks on your roster right now. What do you need me for? He asked the question, Sam Darnold did, asking John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, well, what do you think about Trey Lance? Do you still think he's your quarterback of the future? And maybe the Niners didn't answer completely seriously or completely honestly, but they probably gave Sam Darnold a little bit of an idea about how they actually feel about him. And I would be shocked if that was not part of Sam Darnold's decision to come here and join the San Francisco 49ers. And I think we're seeing more and more evidence of that as, weeks pass. I want to ask you one other question. Did you happen to hear Jordan Palmer, who's the brother of Carson Palmer? He is Sam Darnold's personal quarterback coach. He was on the Green Light podcast with Chris Long, and he was talking about the Niners quarterback room. And he said, Trey Lance has been there, and they're an organization, the 49ers, that do things right, and that's good for Trey Lance. And then he said, quote, but the guy who's going to start there, Sam Darnold, hasn't been with an organization like that. I know it's semantics, and we can dive into that's what he actually meant. But his personal quarterback coach is saying Sam Darnold is going to start there. I mean, what does that mean? It seems like maybe a conversation from Sam Darnold to Jordan Palmer about, I don't know, their conversations when he signed the contract, like, hey, we expect you to play some games with us, whatever the conversation was. But it just seems like the evidence is pointing towards the fact that Sam Darnold, maybe not given a promise, but he somehow is under the impression that he's going to be playing games.
Well, and I'm sure he's got the mentality that he's going to be playing games. Otherwise, you wouldn't sign with the team. I know that between the three quarterbacks now on the roster, Sam Darnold, even though he does have some injury history, his biggest ability is availability. He has started 10 or more games in the NFL, 4 of his first 5 seasons, was hampered the majority of last year because of a high ankle sprain, and then finished out with a quality record for a team that nearly made the playoffs. So he's riding high in a sense and doesn't want to go to a place where he can't play. But he also, I think, one, probably sees the way the 49ers look at their quarterbacks as far as not having faith in Trey Lance, body language wise, and also the fact that they're kind of having tryouts, or at least they've had tryouts. Like, they haven't had a stable quarterback room and a stable hierarchy for quite some time. And that, to me, combined with the fact they have maybe the best roster in football, is absolutely a place I want to be, because via association or, of course, participation, you're going to get paid at the end of this season. So it's a win-win for Sam Darnold. I think that's the biggest reason why he's there.
Maybe. I don't know. I guess I could kind of see it. I'm not totally sure I see it as a win-win. Like, if he doesn't play, I don't think he's gaining all that much. I know, I just used the example of Mitch Trubisky, who didn't play for a year behind Josh Allen and then got another starting opportunity. I would argue that Sam Darnold's reputation at this point is higher than Mitch Trubisky's was at the end of his Chicago career. Maybe I'm splitting hairs and you disagree, but that's how I personally feel. I feel like if Sam Darnold sits on the bench for a year with the 49ers, he just delayed his next opportunity by a year. I don't think that any expectations or opinions on him change all that much if he doesn't play. So if I'm Sam Darnold, I feel like, and again, I could be wrong here, I feel like I want to go somewhere where I can play and prove myself. And I want to go to a good team. Now, those options are relatively limited because you are a relatively unproven quarterback who has not been successful, who has not been on a winning team. How are you going to go to a winning team and play football, thereby increasing your, I don't know, your stock, your ability, your, the opinion of yourself in other people's minds? Maybe the Niners are the only opportunity and, it's not a perfect solution. So maybe he's giving up some opportunity, for the right to play for a good team. I don't know, but I would tend to push back on the idea that he would be willing to go somewhere where he doesn't really think he's going to play. I think playing is the most important thing for Sam Darnold. And again, I could have it totally wrong. I don't know him personally, but that's just how I run through kind of the chain of events.
No, I think you're on target. He wants to play. I also think there's a calculated risk here because
Yeah.
he's 25 going on 26. He's still relatively in the prime of his career. Signed 1-year deal. Is going to make a little bit of money. And if it doesn't work out, then he's in the same place that he was the year prior. And I don't think that unless he gets hurt, his stock is damaged all that much. So I hear what you're saying. And yes, I think in his mind, he's like, I'm ready to go in San Francisco anytime they need me. And ideally, it's at the beginning of the season, perhaps filling in for Brock if he's hurt. And who knows if Trey Lance is going to be in the mix. But I also see it just being a kind of a strategic move by by Sam Darnold and his camp. to try and get to a place where he can have a high ceiling, but also the exact same floor as he did in Carolina.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think probably the reality of the situation is there isn't a situation in the league um, that is perfect for Sam Darnold. There isn't a place where he's given the starting job and where the team has a relatively decent chance at being successful. Where he's going to be given the starting job are teams that are probably going to be bad. And on the teams that are going to be successful that want Sam Darnold, they're not going to give him the starting job. So he's going to have to compromise somewhere. And maybe his compromise was, okay, I'll go to the 49ers where I'm not necessarily for sure going to play games, but maybe it's my best opportunity considering their injury history. That's probably where the reality lies for the most part.